In episode 5, over in Japan, Daniel is ready to throw down with Chosen when he walks in, but Chosen just bows. He does sit down with Daniel and Kimiko, and it does lead to a super awkward conversation, or maybe lack thereof. Eventually, Chosen does go up to get a drink, and Daniel turns to Kimiko saying, "How did this guy find us?" But it turns out that Kimiko ended up calling Chosen. She felt like enough time had passed that the two need to patch up their differences. When Chosen comes back, she tells both of them, "Yeah, I have somewhere to be," and asks Chosen to take Daniel around Okinawa. So Chosen takes Daniel up into a mountain, and they start talking about Miyagi-Do karate. Daniel knows a lot because of the fact that Mr. Miyagi taught him. And he mentions the fact that Mr. Miyagi taught me everything I know, but Chosen says, "I don't think he taught you everything he knew." He takes Daniel to a dojo that is full of Miyagi-Do artifacts, including scrolls. And Daniel gets geeked out. He goes to take one of them, but Chosen says, whoa, you can't take that. You're an outsider. But it turns out that Mr. Miyagi taught Chosen's uncle karate, and Chosen's uncle taught him. So in a way, Daniel and Chosen come from the same lineage, and they're kind of cousins in the karate game. But that argument isn't really holding water with Chosen, so Daniel tries another approach, saying, "Mr. Miyagi treated me like a son. There's nothing he wouldn't have kept from me," implying that some of those scrolls should be Daniel's. But once again, Chosen says, "I don't think he taught you everything that he knew." They square off in the dojo, and Chosen goes after Daniel's leg. And Daniel says, "What kind of defense tactic is that?" But Chosen says there's many different kinds of defense. He tells Daniel that the Miyagi-Do ancestors had to fight off invaders. The only way to survive was to kill. And this is all news to Daniel, who can't figure out why Mr. Miyagi didn't tell him any of this, and Chosen says maybe he thought you weren't ready or you just weren't capable. But the biggest thing that Chosen shows Daniel is the power of pressure points. Chosen ends up hitting Daniel in the right spot in the arm that leaves his arm virtually immobilized. He does the same thing with the leg, and Daniel can't really move. So Chosen grabs his hair, pulls his head back, and it's like the roles are reversed from 30 years ago. Chosen even says, "I've been waiting a long time to do this," and Daniel has prepared to get his face caved in. But when Chosen comes down with his hand, he just honks his nose. Turns out the guy actually has a really good personality. He also agrees to teach Daniel about the pressure points. After the lesson, though, they're coming down from the mountain, and Chosen tells Daniel that it was really tough on him after he lost to him. But his uncle saved him and gave him a chance to prove himself. But the regret of what he did back in the day is still hard to overcome. And Daniel tells him, "Look, man, if it means anything to you, I forgive you." And it does, in fact, mean a lot to Chosen. They bow and are about to go their separate ways, but before Daniel does, Chosen stops him and gives him one of the scrolls to take back with him to the States. Daniel then goes and meets up with Kimiko, but Kimiko isn't alone. There's another female with her. And Daniel actually knows this girl, because this girl is the little girl that Daniel saved from the typhoon years ago. And when Daniel finds out that this is the girl, he gives her a big hug, has a huge smile on her face, and starts to get caught up with her. And it turns out that she is the vice president of sales for Diona, literally the savior that Daniel needs. But just because he saved her from a typhoon 30 years ago doesn't mean she's about to do a bad business deal. No, I'm kidding. I mean, she saves his business. Now, back in the States, Johnny walks into the Diaz household to help Miguel with the day, but Miguel is just wrapping up physical therapy. And the techniques that the physical therapists are using, well, let's just say Johnny isn't the biggest fan of them, and he's having trouble keeping that opinion to himself. It gets to the point where Carmen has to pull him aside and says, "Miguel wants you a part of his rehab, and I'm not going to deprive him of that, but I'm also not going to deprive him of somebody who's trained in medicine. So you need to keep your opinions to yourself." And Johnny agrees to do so, but Johnny also has his own methods on how to get Miguel to walk. And the first is to dangle a swimsuit issue from 1988 in front of him. And even though Miguel can find way better stuff on his phone, he does try to get the magazine, but ends up falling out of his chair. And he's frustrated and tells Johnny, "You could have dangled a PS5 in front of me. I still would have fallen." His next idea is to distract him with conversation, but light his shoelace on fire. Figures, if there's any motivation, it's going to be to get up and put out the fire, but it doesn't work. And the fire continues to spread and spread until finally it reaches his pants, and Johnny actually has to use a fire extinguisher to put it out. And that one really, really hurts Miguel, because he was just powerless to get up from it. So that night, Johnny continues to do some research, hopping on the internet and going to WebMD, or WebMD for us normal people. But he hears Carmen crying outside and goes to see what's wrong, thinking that something happened to Miguel. But she says, "No, just the emotions a lot of times. I need to let it out, and I don't want him to see me like this." She's really concerned that he's 17. He should have his whole life in front of him. He should be out partying and having fun with his friends. Instead, he's confined to a wheelchair. And the most frustrating part is nobody truly knows if this kid is going to walk again. So Johnny says, "Hey, can I borrow him for a couple hours?" and takes him to a Dee Snider concert, sneaking him in, telling the doorman that he's a Make-A-Wish kid. Somehow this word gets to Dee Snider, and he even shouts out Miguel from the stage. But Miguel is having an absolute blast. He takes a selfie with Johnny, and Johnny says, "Hey man, can I get a copy of that?" And Miguel says, "Yeah, sure, I'll tag you." But Johnny tells him, "I don't have my phone. I got rid of it." And Miguel lets him know, "You are aware that Facebook is on the internet, right?" And Johnny plays it off like he did, but of course he didn't. Concert continues though. They're having a great time. And then Johnny looks down and notices that Miguel is tapping his foot. Miguel doesn't even notice this, but when Johnny points it out, they celebrate because this is the first sign of progress. And when they get back to the Diaz household, Carmen wants Miguel to do it over and over and over again and is so happy. Johnny heads back over to his apartment, hops on Facebook to see the photo that Miguel tagged him in, but notices that he has a friend request from Allie. Now, over with Miguel's classmates, Sam is continuing to teach the Miyagi-Do kids, but she ends up getting caught by her mom and Anthony. By the way, shout out to Anthony because in the, quote, 2 months that have taken place since Season 2 and Season 3, kid is slimmed down, looks phenomenal. Still annoying, though. But Amanda is livid that Sam is teaching these kids karate. This is on top of the fact that the school is calling and telling her that Sam is becoming an issue. And Sam tells Amanda, if you really think karate's the issue, then you don't have a clue. And Sam's kind of right. Eli and a bunch of Cobra Kai goons go to golf and stuff and end up giving Chris, who works there, a hard time, dealing some tickets from an innocent kid and trying to cash them in for a bobblehead. But when Chris goes to get it, they end up stealing a bunch of stuff and running out. And Chris texts Sam that night saying, "Great, now I got Cobra Kai bothering me at work." So Sam rounds up some Miyagi-Do kids, and through the information that Chris gives her, they know that they're going to have Cobra Kai outnumbered. And Cobra Kai is literally next door in an abandoned laser tag place, about to drink some warm beer and be cool. So Miyagi-Do catches them off guard. And at first, Miyagi-Do is winning this fight, but then the rest of Cobra Kai shows up, including Tori. And when Tori shows up, Sam starts having a panic attack, hiding. Even though Tori is calling out for her, Sam is just immobilized. And one by one, the Miyagi-Do kids start getting their ass kicked. It gets to the point where Eli has Dimitri's arm in a very compromising position, and Dimitri is begging him to let him go. Although the rest of the Cobra Kai kids are telling Eli to finish him. And Eli gives into the peer pressure and breaks Dimitri's arm. You can just see in the look in his face that he isn't proud of what he did. He feels really bad. But he plays it off to his Cobra Kai buddies like, "Yeah, I'm the man." And Sam is so disappointed in the fact that she couldn't help her friends. Sam goes to the hospital with Dimitri, and Amanda meets her there. And Amanda starts ripping into her for not listening. But once she sees Sam's face, she realizes this isn't the time to rip into your daughter. Because Sam is really, really upset. She tells her mom, "We just wanted to show them that we couldn't be bullied anymore." And it turns out they end up breaking Dimitri's arm. Now, over with the leader of Cobra Kai, Kreese goes to meet with Robbie and kind of giving him the backstory about him, his dad, Cobra Kai, and really just how dominant of a fighter Johnny was and how Kreese can help Robbie become that. But Robbie's not interested, telling the guy to kick rocks. Before he leaves, though, Kreese says, "That's fine, but one piece of advice. All that Miyagi-Do stuff about defense, yeah, that might work in tournaments, but this is the real world. You might want to strike first." And then he takes off. Later that day, though, Robbie does a Google search on Kreese and finds articles about how he won 4 straight All-Valley titles. But then he finds another article about a mysterious dojo with one student that ended up defeating Cobra Kai, and that obviously is Miyagi-Do. He also checks his email and sees that the LaRussos have been blowing up his emails, but he hasn't been getting them. Or at least he hasn't seen them up until this point. He starts writing Sam back when the bully in juvie pulls the cord on the computer. And later that day, when the bully kind of tries to egg him on, Robbie takes Kreese's advice, blindsiding the bully and his buddies, getting into a fight with the kid. The kid holds his own, as does Robbie, and eventually it gets broken up by the juvenile detention guards. But once they're released, they both realize that neither of them snitched on each other, and they kind of gain a mutual respect. And Robbie, in this current situation, realizes that maybe striking first and Kreese's methods were right. But after meeting with Robbie, Kreese just headed back to the dojo, and that night his door opens up, and he thinks it's just a mom trying to sign her kid up for karate, but it's not. It's Amanda, and she is pissed. She yells at him, saying, "Hey, Rambo, your little gang of misfits is running around breaking kids' arms. Kids are getting hurt." And he's able to discern that she must be Daniel LaRusso's wife. And he makes a snide remark about how Daniel now needs his wife to fight his own battles. But Amanda slaps him in the face and says, "I'm going to the cops, and I'm getting you shut down if it's the last thing I do." And then she walks out. Thank you so much for watching this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Like the video if you liked it. Hit thumbs down if you thought it sucked. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up soon. And please be nice in the comments section. Nobody likes being told they suck, even if it's true. Oh, and sharing's caring.